Deep in the frozen soil of Scandinavia, archaeologists keep making a strange discovery. Buried beneath ancient Norse longhouses and just iron axes or pagan amulets, there are millions of silver coins stamped with Arabic calligraphy. For over a century, the Viking Age was secretly powered not by gold looted from European monasteries, but by silver flowing from the heart of the Islamic Caliphate. Then, around the year 975 AD, the silver pipeline suddenly dried up. Almost overnight, the flood of Islamic coins into northern Europe came to a grinding halt. What followed was a catastrophic economic collapse that paralyzed Viking trade routes, broke powerful chieftains, and fundamentally reshaped the Scandinavian world forever. How did a political shift in the desert oases of the Middle East accidentally destroy the warrior economy of the frozen north? To understand this bizarre historical collapse, we have to travel back to the golden age of two empires that should have never met. By the mid-8th century, the Islamic world had undergone a massive political revolution. The Umayyad dynasty was overthrown, and the mighty Abbasid Caliphate established its capital in the newly built city of Baghdad, the City of Peace. The Abbasid Caliphate was an economic juggernaut. Sitting at the crossroads of the Silk Road, Baghdad required an immense, reliable currency to power global commerce. That currency was the silver dirham, a coin minted with rigorous metallurgical purity and stamped with verses of the Quran. Because the silver dirham maintained such high purity, it quickly became the absolute gold standard, or rather, silver standard, of global trade. From Spain to Central Asia, everyone wanted Abbasid silver. Meanwhile, thousands of miles to the north, a group of Scandinavian Norsemen known as the Norse were pushing eastward down the river systems of modern-day Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus. They weren't just looking for lands to raid, they were searching for wealth. Using the Volga and Dnieper river highways, these Swedish Vikings rode deeper south than any Western European had dared. Eventually, they hit the shores of the Caspian and Black Seas, making direct contact with Muslim merchants and the Volga Bulgars. The Scandinavians brought raw materials that the wealthy Islamic world desperately needed, high-grade furs from the Arctic tundra, beeswax for candles, amber from the Baltic, and, tragically, tens of thousands of Slavic captives to fuel the medieval slave trade. In exchange, the Muslim merchants paid in the only commodity the Norse prized above all else, pure silver. Scandinavia had virtually no silver mines of its own, making the white metal a symbol of prestige, power, and political life in the north. The scale of this trade was staggering. Archaeologists have discovered over 100,000 Islamic silver coins in Sweden alone, with tens of thousands more found across the island of Gotland, Poland, and Russia. Modern estimates suggest tens of millions of dirhams moved north. Interestingly, the Vikings didn't care about the religious calligraphy or political authority stamped on the coins. To a Viking, a coin wasn't money, it was raw bullion. They tested purity by biting the metal or making small test cuts, a practice known as pecking. If a transaction required less than a full coin, they simply chopped the silver coins into pieces. These fragments, known as hack silver, were weighed on small portable balances that Viking traders carried on their belts. This constant influx of Islamic silver changed Norse society. Wealthy warlords used Arabic silver to buy the loyalty of warriors, finance massive longship fleets, and build trading hubs like Backa in Sweden and Hedeby in Denmark. The entire late Viking expansion was bankrolled by Baghdad. By the mid-10th century, the Norse economy had become dangerously addicted to Abbasid silver. But thousands of miles to the south, the geopolitical foundations of the Islamic world were beginning to crack. Much of the silver flowing into Scandinavia didn't come directly from Baghdad, but through a powerful regional dynasty called the Samanids, who ruled Transoxiana and Persia from their capital in Bukhara. The Samanids controlled vast silver mines, such as the famous Panjshir mines in modern-day Afghanistan. For decades, These mines produced an almost endless stream of fresh silver. But in the mid-10th century, disaster struck, the mines began to run dry. At the same time, central authority in Baghdad was weakening. Local warlords, nomadic steppe tribes, and rival dynasties like the Fatimids in Egypt fragmented the Caliphate's territory. Trade routes were no longer safe, and silver production plummeted. Between 960 and 980 AD, the flow of silver to the far north suddenly collapsed. The Samanid Mint stopped producing coins in large quantities, and merchant caravans heading up the Volga River vanished. The silver tap had been turned off. When the silver stopped arriving, the Scandinavian economy fell into shock. Viking warlords who depended on distributing silver to keep their warriors loyal suddenly had nothing to offer. Internal violence flared as clans fought over the remaining silver hoards. Without fresh high-purity silver from the Caliphate, Norse traders tried to adapt. They began melting down older jewelry and cutting remaining coins thinner, but hyperinflation and mistrust swept through the trading towns. Famous eastern trade cities that had grown rich on the Islamic silver trade began to decay. Bakka, once the crown jewel of Swedish commerce, was completely abandoned around 975 AD, its decline matching the exact timeline of the Islamic silver shortage. Desperate for alternative sources of wealth, Scandinavian leaders turned their gaze back toward Western Europe. If the East could no longer provide silver through trade, the West would have to yield it through force and extortion. This shift triggered a new, brutal wave of raids against England and Francia. Instead of small raiding parties, massive royal armies landed on English shores, demanding huge payments of silver known as dangeld just to leave cities unburned. Archaeological hoard evidence confirms this pivot instantly. In Scandinavian soil, layers dated after 990 AD show a dramatic drop in Arabic dirhams, replaced almost entirely by Anglo-Saxon silver pennies bearing the face of King Ethelred the Unready. Extracting Western silver required centralized power. Individual chieftains couldn't organize massive royal armies. To survive the silver crisis, local warlords had to unite small tribes into centralized kingdoms. Norway, Sweden, and Denmark were born out of this restructuring. Kings like Svein Fogbeard of Denmark and Olaf Tryggvason of Norway realized they could no longer rely on foreign bullion. They began establishing their own domestic mints, striking native coins for the first time in Scandinavian history. The loss of the Eastern silver trade destroyed the old Viking way of life. The freewheeling merchant trader who relied on silver-weight scales was replaced by feudal vassals, Christian kings, and state-controlled tax systems. To build closer economic ties with the silver-rich Christian kingdoms of Western Europe, Scandinavian rulers accelerated their conversion to Christianity, turning their backs on the old Norse gods and their former Islamic trade partnerships. It remains one of the most incredible examples of economic interconnectedness in the medieval world. A mining shortage in the mountains of Central Asia and a decline in Baghdad's political hegemony reshaped the destiny of Northern Europe thousands of miles away. Today, those forgotten silver dirhams lie silent under Swedish fields and Russian riverbanks, tangible proof of an era when Muslim caliphs, Persian miners, and Viking warriors were bound together by a single shared obsession. Major discoveries, like the Spillings hoard found on Gotland, containing over 14,000 coins, mostly from the Islamic world, continue to reveal just how massive this trade network truly was before its sudden collapse. This historical anomaly proves that medieval globalization was far more advanced than we often think. Long before modern financial markets, an economic shockwave in Baghdad could bring down trading empires in Scandinavia. Without the collapse of the Abbasid silver trade, Western Europe might have faced decades more of Eastern Viking raids, and the modern nation-states of Scandinavia might have taken a completely different form. So the next time you picture a Viking warrior, don't just picture iron swords and wooden shields, picture the purse at his belt, filled with the silver of Baghdad, and remember how fragile global prosperity has always been. If you enjoy discovering this hidden chapter of history, hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the forgotten connections that shaped our world. What story should we cover next? Let us know in the comments below.